Good morning, 7th grade. Hopefully, you guys had a good Wednesday. It was really nice to see you guys today, or yesterday, sorry. If you can see in change of scenery, I'm at my parents' house today, so I'm making the video here. But yeah, so yesterday we talked about how the manufacturing started off with a slow start. And we talked about how in Britain they had a lot more success because they needed to. People were more willing to work into these factories and they were willing to work for the slow pay. In the United States, they would rather work on farms, and that's how they did it. But then the war happened and they needed to have more supplies. And the way they needed to have more supplies was they needed to rely on themselves because they canceled all trade with the European countries because they were getting all their stuff stolen when they were sending it out to sea. So the US decided we're not going to trade with them and we're just going to do everything on our own. And that's how the manufacturing kind of started. And people started to invest in this money in factories and invest in manufacturing. And that's how the whole manufacturing boom came and started up. Okay? So today we are going to jump into a new section and we're going to talk about how the mills and life in the mills, how all these new factories that started, how it changes the life for all the people that were working in them. So let's go ahead and talk about that today. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how the spread of the mills in the northern and east part of the United States, it changed the lives of all the workers. So as factories and mills were established, the way people work changed drastically. One dramatic change was the opportunity that the factory work gave to the young women. For young women in farm families, it was almost the only chance they had to earn their own money and measure of independence. Today, we're only going to talk about the mills. We're not going to talk about the women. We'll talk about the women on Monday. So because of all the factories and all the machines, the workers there, they no longer need specific skills like the craftspeople did. Since they're operating machines now, they didn't have to be skilled. Before, when people were doing things on their own, they had to have skills. They had to know how to make shoes. They had to know how to make tables. But now, they were just going to use machines. Because of this big change, a lot of people did not want to change. They didn't like change. So they started to protest the factories, and they said that we are not going to be a part of it. So many mill owners in the United States, people that own these factories, they couldn't find enough people to work in the factories because of the other jobs, such as farming. So at first, there was this guy, his name was Samuel Slater. And what Samuel Slater did was he kind of did what Star Wars did. He started to hire apprentices, kind of like how Luke was an apprentice to Obi-Wan. He would hire these young people and he would teach them how to work in the mills. And for several years, they would learn how to work. However, these people that were apprentices, they only got simple jobs and easy jobs, such as like cleaning the machines, taking out the trash, and stuff like that. And they got really tired of it because, like in Willy Wonka, you're doing the same job for a really long time. So they got tired of doing the same jobs over and over again. So what happened was these apprentices said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and leave because this is boring and you're not paying me a lot of money, and I'm going to go ahead and do something else. Okay? So what happened is Samuel Slater, he had to come up with a new idea on how to attract people. Since the workers were leaving, he needed to find a new strategy in order to keep everyone working in the mills. So eventually he started this new idea and he started to hire the entire families. So back then, like I was telling you guys before, if you were working on the farm, typically everybody in the family worked. So Slater said, why don't we do the same exact thing, have the whole family work, but here, let's have them work in the mills. And this is what kind of started child labor. So eventually, he found that Slater started to use these families to work, and he realized that we can get them all to work at a low cost. He also hired the children because the children, he can pay them a lot less money to work in the factories than the adults. So that's exactly what they did. He decided that we're going to start to hire a bunch of families, and the families were all going to work, and that's what was going to happen. One thing that Slater wanted, and this is very important, he wanted to hire the whole family, but he wanted to hire huge families that were really big, because he was able to pay the kids a lot less money than the adults, but he would still get them work done. Typically, the adults would earn as much money in one day than the children would win in a whole week. So that's why he wanted to hire big families with a lot of kids, because he can pay the kids less money. So in order to get the families to work there, what Slater did was he decided, we'll hire the whole family, and when you come and work at our factory, we'll also supply you with a place to live. So Slater used to use his mills, and he would build houses, and he would let people live in the factories in their houses. So this was a deal that people really couldn't pass up. In addition, he started to pay the workers in store credit. So every factory had like a store, and they had everything you needed: food, clothing, stuff for your house. And people could start to use their money that they played, or they got paid in to buy stuff there. So they never really had to leave the mills. This is almost like the manor system. If you remember the manor system, people never had to leave the manor system because everything they needed was on the manor. And that's exactly the same strategy that the mill owners used. And because he was hiring these huge families, he saved a lot of money by paying the kids less. So what he would do was he would save all this money and he would reinvest it all into the factories. This strategy that Slater did was hiring families, poor families. What he did, he called this the Rhode Island system. And this is because this is where all his factories were opened up, in the city or in the state of Rhode Island. So a lot of owners and a lot of other factory members, they started to copy this model because they saw that it worked, and they saw that he was able to get rich. He saw that he was able to fill the workers and get all the work done with these families. One thing that they did was they loved to recruit people in poor communities. And the reason why was because these poor communities, they needed a job and they needed money. So it was easy for them to go and work with these in the mills because they had a house and they were getting paid for their work. Okay? So one of the earliest mill towns, they called it Slatersville, and this is where Samuel Slater collected everything. And pretty much what would happen was everyone would move there, everyone would work, and the whole families were able to do that. Okay? Not only did they do this, but people never had to leave. And one thing that was important was they hired big families to do this. So this is Slatersville. This is actually his first mill. And notice how it's by the water because they needed water for the power. But this is how they did and operated his new workings style. So as a quick review, today we talked about how mill lives change workers' lives, or how mills change workers' lives. And the way it changed workers' lives was they started to hire families. They went for huge families. And the reason why they wanted to hire big families is because normally you would have 2 adults and you would have a lot of kids. And the more kids means the more work they can have at a cheaper price. So they would always go and hire the families to work. When he would hire the families to work, he provided them with housing, with food, store credit, and everything they needed was there on the mills. Okay, this whole system was called the Rhode Island system. One thing is that all these mill owners started to copy this strategy, and everyone started to hire families because they saw that this was a perfect way to make money. You get more kids to work in the factories, you pay them less, and you still get the work done. One important thing that I don't want you to forget is the reason why they wanted families is because they were able to hire more people at a cheap rate, and they would go for the poor families because they realized that the poor families needed a place to stay, they needed food, and they needed supplies. And if he can provide it for them on the factories, then for sure they're willing to work in the mills. So for homework, I want you to answer this question. How did Slater's Rhode Island system change employment practices in the mill? The second thing, this is something you guys haven't done before, but I'm giving you guys a chance. I want you guys to create an advertisement. Like if you know how like sometimes you're walking around and you see signs that say workers wanted or something like that you'd see along the streets, like now hiring. That's what I want you to do. I want you to make an advertisement for somebody to work in the mill. In your advertisement, I want you guys to answer these questions or include the information to answer. So what type of workers does Slater want? What segments of society might want? So what type of families? Do they want the rich? Do they want the poor? What incentives or what benefits do people get if they worked at the mill? So think about everything that they provided for them. And number 3, why would a person want to work at one of Slater's mills opposed to others? So create an advertisement like if you're trying to get workers. For example, I'll show you an example right now. So this is an example of an advertisement. It says families wanted, 3 or 4 families of large size, good character, find employment at Blackstone Manufacturing. Okay. So that's kind of like an example of what you need to do, but I want you to be creative. Choose graphics, choose photos, and just make an advertisement. Just remember the key reasons why they wanted big families and everything like that, and I think you guys will be fine. If you need any help or you're confused, just answer those questions and let me know, and I'm here to help you. So just send me a message on Google Classroom. If you don't have any questions, I'm excited to see you guys tomorrow, 10 a.m. for our first ever game day. I'll see you 7th grade.